First time my new coworker saw my ink, it happened over a paper coffee cup in the break room, and she said something so nasty about my skin that I just stood there quiet, smiling like nothing cracked inside me. I did not understand it then. Not really. I did not understand why a grown woman would look at flowers on my forearm and act like she had found mold in her lunch. I did not understand why she would keep circling back to it, day after day, like my body was a problem she had been assigned to solve. And I definitely did not understand why she was watching me that closely in the first place. My name is Magnolia. I am 52 years old, and I work in production for a small packaging company outside a mid-sized city. We make printed sleeves and labels, the kind that wrap around bottles and jars, and we ship to warehouses, not to people. There are no customers coming through, no lobby, no showroom, just machines, deadlines, stacks of materials, and 6 of us trying to keep everything moving without losing fingers. When I started, it was winter, cold enough that everyone lived in hoodies and flannels. I wore long sleeves every day, mostly because the building was old and drafty, and the heaters had moods. I liked the work. It was repetitive in a comforting way. Measure, print, cut, stack, label, log. I liked knowing what the next hour would look like. Then spring warmed up, and the building changed its attitude. The air got heavy. The machines ran hotter. People started cracking doors, then windows, then finally gave up and brought in fans. Tank tops and shorts became normal. Nobody cared. Nobody had time to care except her. Her name was Greer. She started a couple months after me. She was around my age, maybe a little younger, with stiff blonde hair that always looked sprayed into place, and a smile that felt like a door closing. When she first came in, she seemed fine. She was polite. She asked the right questions. She was the type who arrived early and looked around like she was cataloging everything. Shoes squeaked. Did not work on the same line most days. She floated between stations, learning. I kept my head down and did my part. If she had a problem with me before, I did not notice it. The first hot day, I wore a short sleeve shirt, simple, gray cotton, nothing dramatic. I was halfway through my coffee in the break room when Greer walked in and stopped so hard her shoes squeaked. Her eyes went straight to my forearm. I waited for the normal social script. Oh, you have tattoos. Are they new? Does it hurt? Where did you get it done? The harmless stuff people say when they do not know what else to say. Instead, she leaned in like she was about to share a secret and said, in a low voice like she was doing me a favor, I just have to tell you, that looks so unprofessional. I blinked at her. I even glanced behind me, like maybe she was talking to someone else. She was not. Unprofessional, she repeated. At work. I am surprised they allow that here. I could feel my face go warm, but I kept my tone light. Workplace norms are changing, I said, and nobody here has ever mentioned a problem with them. Greer made a small sound like a disappointed teacher. It does not matter if they mention it. It is still unprofessional. You are representing the company. I looked down at my own arm. The tattoo was a cluster of flowers, soft lines, muted color, something I had gotten after my divorce because I wanted one thing in my life that I chose just for me. It was not obscene. It was not violent. It was not even loud. I said, as calmly as I could, this company does not have a policy against it. Greer smiled again. It did not reach her eyes. Well, maybe they should. Then she walked out, and I just stood there for a moment with my coffee, pretending the air had not shifted. I told myself it was a weird first impression, and it would pass. People have opinions. People have quirks. Maybe she would get it out of her system. She did not. She brought it up the next day, and the day after that. At first, it was little comments, tossed like pebbles. You know, you could always wear a cardigan. I cannot imagine choosing that. I just think standards are slipping. I tried polite. I tried breezy. I tried the cheerful shutdown. You have said that. I disagree. Greer would nod like she heard me, and then she would come back later and do it again, like she could wear me down through repetition. After a week of it, I said, I am not talking about my tattoos anymore. Greer tilted her head. I am not trying to argue, she said. I am trying to help you. Help me. I started ignoring her. I kept my face neutral. I responded to work questions only. When she tried to comment on my body, I acted like the sound had not reached me. That usually works on people like her. They get bored. They move on. Greer did not move on. She escalated. I began hearing my own name in rooms I was not in. I would walk past the supply shelf and hear Greer's voice drop into that confidential whisper. Did you see what she has all over her arms? I mean, really, at her age, it is sad. At first, I thought I might be imagining it. The building had weird acoustics. Metal and concrete, sound carried. Then one afternoon, Arden, one of the women who had been there the longest, caught me by the time clock and said quietly, hey, just so you know, Greer has been talking about you. My stomach dropped. What did she say? Arden looked uncomfortable. She keeps saying you make us look bad. Like the whole shop looks sloppy because of it. I felt my hands go cold. I do not even know her. Arden glanced on at my arms, then back up fast. I do not care about your tattoos. I just wanted you to know she is stirring people up. I thanked her, then walked back to my station with my heart thumping like I had done something wrong. That was the worst part, the way it made me feel guilty for simply existing. That night at home, I stood in my bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror with my sleeves pushed up. Flowers on one arm, a patterned sleeve on the other, paisley shapes, geometric curves. The work was beautiful. It had been part of my healing, part of my decision to stop shrinking. And yet I caught myself thinking, maybe I should cover them just to make this stop. The thought made my throat tighten with anger, because it was not about professionalism. It was about control. It was about someone deciding they had the right to punish me for not matching their comfort. The next morning I wore my short sleeves anyway. Greer noticed. Of course she did. She walked up while I was logging a batch number and said, loud enough for the closest station to hear, you know, everyone is talking about it. I did not look up. I kept my pen moving. About the job, I said. Greer's laugh was sharp. About you. You are making yourself a topic. You should think about the image you are putting out. I set the pen down and finally looked at her. Greer, I said evenly, do not comment on my tattoos again. Her eyes widened a little. Then the smile returned. Oh, I am sorry. I forget some people cannot handle honest feedback. That was the moment I realized she did not just dislike my tattoos. She liked the effect her comments had on me. She liked watching me try to stay calm. She liked the power. So I did the one thing that takes power away from people like that. I stopped giving her emotion. I said, okay, just that. Greer blinked, like she had expected a fight and I had handed her an empty box. Okay, I repeated. Then I turned back to my work. For a couple of days, she seemed thrown. She tried different angles. She tried sympathy. It is just I worry for you. She tried judgment. It looks cheap. She tried pretending she was joking, nudging my arm like we were friends. All I gave her was calm. Okay. And then she started doing something else. She started documenting me. I noticed because she was not subtle. She would appear in doorways when I walked through the shop floor. She would linger near the lockers when I changed into my apron. I caught her once with with her phone held low, angled toward my arms. When our eyes met, she did not even look embarrassed. She lifted her chin like she had the right. I went still. You taking pictures of me? Greer slid her phone into her pocket. Of course not, she said. Why would I do that? My heartbeat felt loud in my ears. Because you are obsessed with my skin, I wanted to say. Because you cannot stop. But I did not say it. I just watched her for a second, then turned away. That night, I opened a note on my phone and started writing down dates, times, little details. Greer made a comment at the printer station. Greer spoke to Arden in the aisle. Greer lingered by my locker. I told myself I was being dramatic. I told myself I was just frustrated, and this was my way of feeling in control. Then the first real twist happened. A week later, Jane, our operations manager, called me into her office. Jane was younger than me, early 40s maybe, sharp and efficient, the kind of boss who did not waste your time. I liked her. She had hired me because I knew the machines, because I was reliable, because I did not bring chaos into a place that already had enough. I sat down across from her desk, trying to keep my face neutral. Jane folded her hands. Magnolia, she said, I need to ask you something. My stomach tightened. Okay. She hesitated, like she did not want to say it. Has anyone talked to you about dress code? I felt my throat go dry. No. Jane's eyes flicked to my arms, specifically the part that was visible under my short sleeves. She cleared her throat. Greer mentioned concerns about professionalism. She said you might need guidance. I stared at Jane for a second, stunned by the audacity. The way Greer had gone above me, around me, straight to my manager, with my body as a complaint. I forced myself to breathe slowly. Jane, I said, is there a policy against tattoos here? Jane's expression shifted, like she realized what this actually was. No, she said, there is not, and I do not personally care. I nodded. Okay. Jane leaned back slightly. But Greer said you were refusing to cover them on purpose, like you were trying to provoke people. For a moment, I could not speak. The humiliation hit first, hot and sharp, then anger colder underneath, because of course Greer had framed it that way. Of course she had made herself the victim, the reasonable one, the one just trying to protect the company. I kept my voice steady. I have never been asked to cover them, I said, and Greer has been commenting on my tattoos repeatedly for weeks. I told her to stop. She did not stop. Jane's eyebrows lifted repeatedly. Yes? Jane was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, why did you not bring this to me? I swallowed, because I thought I should be able to handle it myself, because it felt petty, because I did not want to be the person who complains. Jane exhaled slowly. It is not petty if someone is targeting you. I will talk to her. I nodded again, still careful. Okay. When I walked out of that office, I did not feel victorious. I felt exposed, like Greer had dragged my private self into management and made it a file folder. Greer was at her station when I returned. She watched me come in with a small, satisfied look, like she knew exactly where I had been. She had sent me to Jane on purpose. That was when I understood the real game. The comments were not just comments. They were bait. If I snapped, she would call me unstable. If I complained, she would call me sensitive. If I stayed quiet, she would speak for me. And now she had started building a story about me that did not match reality. I sat down and turned on my machine. My hands were steady, but my chest felt tight. I thought about all the times I had smiled through her comments. All the times I had let her mutter to herself in the aisle. All the times I had tried to be above it. Greer did not want above it. Greer wanted under it. Quick pause outside the story. Some nights I am editing these and I want to quit. But then I see your comments and I keep going. Like, subscribe and tell me your city, state, or country. Okay, continuing. All right, now let me take you back to the moment I decided I was done being polite. It happened 3 days after Jane spoke to Greer. The shop was louder than usual. A big order. Tight deadline. Everyone moving fast. I was carrying a stack of finished sleeves toward shipping when I heard Greer's voice behind me, sharp enough to cut through the machines. Well, I guess we are allowed to look like criminals now. The words landed like a slap. I stopped walking, but I did not turn around. I could feel Arden and Calla nearby go still, like they had heard it too. I set the stack down gently, very gently, like I was placing something fragile. Then I turned and looked at Greer. She did not flinch. She actually looked pleased with herself, like she had been waiting for me to finally react. I took a slow breath and said, Greer, say that again. Her smile widened. I do not know why you are getting so emotional, she said. I am just saying what everyone thinks. I nodded once. Okay. And I walked away. That was it. No confrontation. No dramatic speech. Just okay and distance. Greer looked almost disappointed, like she had wanted a bigger scene. But I had not walked away because I was scared. I walked away because I had something better than a scene. I had my phone. I had my notes. And I had a clear understanding now of what I needed to do. I went to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and opened my note again. My fingers moved quickly. Greer called me a criminal in front of coworkers. Daytime location. Then I did something I had never done before at this job. I emailed Jane. I kept it short. Professional. No emotion. No accusation that could be twisted. I wrote that Greer had been making repeated comments about my tattoos, that it had now escalated into insults, and that I was starting to feel targeted. I listed 3 examples with dates and times. I asked what the proper process was for reporting ongoing harassment in our shop. Then I hit send. When I walked back onto the floor, Greer was watching me again, but this time her eyes looked a little uncertain, like she could sense the air had shifted but could not see why. She stepped into my path, blocking me just enough to be annoying. You went running to Jane, did you? She said softly, trying to get me in trouble. I met her gaze and kept my voice calm. I am just doing my job, Greer. Her expression tightened. You think you are so smart, she whispered. You think you can make me look bad. I shrugged slightly. Okay. And I walked around her. Behind me, I heard her inhale, sharp and angry, like she was deciding something. By the end of the day, I knew what she had decided, because when I checked the production log before I left, 3 of my entries were missing. Not crossed out, not corrected, missing, like they had never existed. My stomach sank as I stared at the blank spaces, and then I saw Greer's handwriting in the margin, neat and smug, a note that said, incomplete, needs redo. I stood there with my finger hovering over the page, feeling heat rise behind my eyes. Those logs were not optional. Those logs were how we tracked batches, how we proved we met deadlines, how we protected ourselves when something went wrong. If my logs looked incomplete, it would look like I was careless. Greer had stopped talking about my tattoos. Now she was trying to ruin my reputation. I took out my phone, held it steady, and took a clear photo of the page with her handwriting in frame. Then I took another photo of my own original notes on the batch numbers. Then a third photo of the machine screen showing the completed run history. I did not cry. I did not shout. I did not confront her. I just gathered proof quietly, while Greer packed her bag at the other end of the room like nothing had happened. As I walked out into the warm evening air, I checked my email one more time in the parking lot. Jane had replied she wanted to meet with me first thing in the morning, and she had added Joe, one of the owners, to the invite. I sat in my car with the engine off, looking at that meeting notice, feeling my heart pound in a way that was half fear and half relief. Because Greer had finally gone too far, and tomorrow, she was going to find out what happens when you poke at someone's skin, long enough for them to stop staying quiet. The next morning, I arrived early, like I always did, but the shop felt different. The air was already warm and stale, like the building had been holding its breath overnight. My boots made small echoes on the concrete as I walked past the silent machines, and every step felt louder than it should have. Greer's car was already in the lot. That hit me like a cold splash. She wanted to be first. She wanted to set the tone. She wanted to walk into that meeting like she owned the story. I kept my face neutral and went straight to my station, clocked in, and did what I always did when I was trying not to fall apart. I focused on tiny tasks. I checked the safety guards. I lined up materials. I wiped down a surface that did not need wiping. My hands moved while my mind spun. When my email reminder chimed, my stomach tightened so hard I almost laughed. It was just a meeting. A normal work meeting. Yet my pulse was acting like I was walking into court. Jane's office was at the end of a short hallway, separated from the floor by a door that never quite shut right. I could hear machines starting up as I approached, a familiar hum building behind me. I paused outside her door, exhaled slowly, and knocked. Jane's voice came through crisp. "Come in." Joe was already inside. Joe was one of the owners, and he usually stayed in the business side of things, sales calls and contracts, the part of the company that felt like another universe from the clanging shop floor. He looked out of place in the small office, like a suit jacket had wandered into a workshop by accident. He nodded at me with a calm expression that made me feel slightly less alone. Greer sat across from Jane, posture straight, hands folded. She was dressed like she was attending a church function, not working around machinery, high neckline, long sleeves, a pale cardigan buttoned all the way up despite the heat. When she saw me, her eyes flicked to my forearms. I was wearing short sleeves again, not out of spite, because it was hot and I was done shrinking. Greer's lips pressed together. Then she looked away quickly, like my skin offended her vision. Jane gestured to the chair beside the desk. "Sit, Magnolia." I sat. I kept my phone in my pocket. I kept my hands in my lap. I kept my face calm even though my cheeks felt tight. Jane did not waste time. She looked at Greer first. "Greer, I spoke with you earlier this week about comments you have been making to Magnolia." Greer's expression shifted instantly, softening like a curtain dropping into place. "I have concerns, Jane," she said. "I am not trying to be mean. I am trying to protect the company." Joe's gaze stayed steady, like he was watching her carefully without reacting. Jane's eyes moved to me. "Magnolia sent me an email last night with specific examples of repeated comments and an insult on the production floor." Greer's head turned sharply toward me. "You emailed her?" I did not answer. I just looked at Jane. Greer forced a smile. "Jane, I want to be clear. I did not insult anyone. If Magnolia feels insulted, that is her interpretation." My fingers curled slightly in my lap, a small pulse of anger. But I did not let it rise into my face. I reminded myself of the proof sitting safe on my phone. I reminded myself that my voice did not need to get loud to be believed. Jane's tone stayed even. "Greer, did you say the words? I guess we are allowed to look like criminals now, on the production floor." Greer blinked slowly like she was thinking. Then she gave a small shrug. "I may have said something like that," she admitted. "It was not directed at anyone. It was a general comment about standards." Joe leaned forward slightly. "Standards?" he repeated, like he was tasting the word. Greer nodded, warming to her point. "Exactly. We are not a tattoo parlor. We are a professional company. When people see employees looking like that, it reflects on all of us." Jane's voice sharpened a fraction. "Our employees do not meet customers on the floor, and we do not have a policy against tattoos. You were instructed to stop commenting on a coworker's body." Greer spread her hands, palms up. "I cannot pretend it is not an issue," she said. "And it is not just the tattoos. Magnolia has been hostile to but hat was the first micro twist, and it made my stomach drop for a second because it was so predictable it almost felt rehearsed. The moment she could not control me, she reframed me as the aggressor." Jane's eyebrows lifted. "Hostile how?" Greer's eyes flicked toward me again. "She glares at me. She ignores me. She refuses to have a conversation." Joe's gaze narrowed slightly. He looked at me. "Magnolia." I kept my voice calm. "I have ignored comments about my tattoos because I asked her to stop and she did not. I have not glared. I have just kept working." Greer's laugh came out like a small snap. "See? That tone. She is always like that." Jane held up a hand. "Enough, Magnolia. Tell me about the production log issue you mentioned in your email." Greer's posture stiffened. She glanced at Jane, then at Joe, then at me, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not anger, not disgust, something closer to worry. I swallowed and kept my voice steady. "Yesterday, I found 3 of my log entries missing. They had been removed and replaced with a note in Greer's handwriting saying, 'Incomplete, needs redo.' I had completed the work. The machine history confirms it." Greer's face tightened. "That is not true." Jane looked directly at her. "Greer, did you alter the log?" Greer's chin lifted. "I corrected it," she said. "Magnolia's logging was messy and inconsistent. I was trying to clean it up so we would not get audited." Joe made a small sound, not quite a laugh, more like disbelief. "We get audited," he said, "because our logs are accurate, not because they are pretty." Greer's eyes flashed. "Someone has to care about professionalism," she snapped, "if nobody else will." Jane's tone became very quiet. "Greer, altering another employee's documentation without permission is serious, especially if it misrepresents work completed." Greer leaned forward, voice rising. "It did not misrepresent anything. I said it needed redo because it did." She rushes. She is careless. My chest tightened, but I stayed calm. I took my phone out and placed it gently on the desk, screen facing down like it was something fragile. I looked at Jane, then at Joe. "May I show you the photos?" Greer's eyes widened. "Photos?" Jane nodded once. "Yes." I turned the phone over, opened my camera roll, and handed it to Jane without commentary. One by one, she scrolled through. The log page with Greer's handwriting, my own handwritten notes with batch numbers, the machine screen showing completed run history. Jane's jaw tightened as she looked. She turned the phone slightly so Joe could see. Joe's expression changed. He was still calm, but the calm had a sharper edge now. "Greer," he said, "why would you do this?" Greer's lips parted, and for a second she looked genuinely confused, like she could not believe we were all treating this like a real problem. Then her face hardened again, because, she said, nobody else is doing their job. Someone has to. And she refuses to comply with basic standards. Jane set the phone down carefully on her desk. "Greer," she said, "you do not get to enforce personal standards by sabotaging a coworker's documentation." Greer snapped her head toward me. "Sabotage. That is a strong word. She is overreacting just like she always does." I did not argue. I did not accuse. I did the quiet thing instead, the smart thing. I asked one small question. "Greer," I said softly. If you believe my entries were incorrect, why did you not come to me first and ask to review them together? The room went still. Even the hum from the shop floor seemed to fade for a moment, like the building was listening. Greer's mouth opened, then closed. Her cheeks flushed. Because, she said, you are not approachable. Jane's eyes flicked to me, then back to her. Not approachable. Greer nodded quickly, relieved to have an answer. She dismisses me. She looks down on me. She thinks she is better than me because she decided to cover herself in ink. There it was. The truth sliding out because she could not help herself. It was never about logs. It was never about audits. It was about how my body made her feel small and powerless. Joe leaned back in his chair. His voice stayed level, but it was colder now. Greer, he said, you were hired to do production work, not to police Magnolia's body, not to rewrite documentation to punish her. This is not acceptable. Greer's eyes flicked toward the door. I could almost see her thinking about escape routes. I could almost see her calculating whether she could flip the script again. Then came the second micro twist, the one that made my stomach lurch again. Greer straightened, voice suddenly sweet. I understand, Joe, I do, but I am worried about something else too. Jane's eyes narrowed slightly. What? Greer looked directly at Jane. Magnolia has been taking pictures on the floor, she said, of company documentation, of machine screens. That is confidential. Jane's gaze snapped to me, then back to Greer. For a split second, I felt heat rise in my face. Not guilt, not fear, rage, the way she tried to turn my proof into misconduct. But I kept my tone calm. Jane, I said, those photos were taken after hours on the production log and the machine history, screened to document alterations and completed runs. There is no customer information in them, no proprietary design, no outside data, just batch numbers and timestamps. Joe's eyebrows lifted. Timestamps. Jane looked at Greer. Are you claiming Magnolia broke a policy? Greer's mouth tightened. She is always finding ways to justify. That is what people like her do. People like her. Jane's voice went very flat. Greer, stop. Greer flinched slightly, like she was not used to being told no. Joe leaned forward. Magnolia, he said, send those photos to Jane and me after this meeting. Jane, pull the system access logs for the production entries and see who edited what and when. If Greer changed those logs, there will be a record. Greer's eyes widened again, and this time she could not hide the panic. Access logs, that was my silent revenge, and I did not even have to say it out loud. I had not exposed her. I had simply placed the truth in the hands of people who had the authority to see it. Greer's voice rose. This is ridiculous. You are making a huge deal out of nothing. I am trying to keep standards. Jane's tone sharpened again. Greer, you have been told to stop commenting on Magnolia's tattoos. You continued. You escalated into insults. You altered documentation, and now you are attempting to shift blame. This is not a standards issue. This is a behavior issue. Greer's face turned a deeper shade of red. She stood abruptly, chair scraping. So what? She snapped. You are just going to protect her because you like her. Joe stood too, slower, controlled. We are going to protect the work environment, he said. We are going to protect accuracy, and we are going to protect our employees from harassment. Greer's breathing was visible now, quick and shallow. She looked at me like she wanted me to react, like she wanted tears or a shout, something she could point to as proof that I was the problem. I gave her nothing. Jane looked at her. Greer, she said, you will return to your station for now. Do not approach Magnolia. Do not speak about her appearance. Do not touch production logs you are not assigned to. Joe and I will meet with HR today and we will follow up. Greer's mouth twisted. Fine, she hissed, but you will regret letting this kind of thing slide. People talk. Reputations matter. She turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind her, and the office felt suddenly too quiet. My shoulders sagged slightly, not from relief exactly, but from the exhaustion of holding myself steady for so long. Jane looked at me, her expression softer now. I am sorry, she said. You should have come to me sooner. I nodded. I know. Joe's voice was gentler than I expected. You did the right thing documenting it, he said. Calm, specific, that matters. I swallowed hard. I did not trust myself to speak for a second. My throat felt tight, like the anger and humiliation were finally trying to rise. Jane tapped her pen once against the desk. Magnolia, she said, is there anything else we should know? I hesitated, then nodded. She has been trying to catch me off guard. She watches me. She has tried to take photos, I think. She has been talking to coworkers about my tattoos, trying to turn them against me. Joe's jaw tightened. All right, he said. We will handle it. As I walked back onto the floor, the machines were running full, the familiar roar returning. Greer was at her station, shoulders rigid, moving too fast, like she was fueled by anger. She looked at me once, and the look was different now. It was not just disgust. It was calculation, like she had lost the first round, and she was already planning the second. I went back to my work and kept my head down. I logged everything. I took my breaks on time. I followed procedures perfectly, not because I feared her, but because I was done giving her any excuse. By the afternoon, Jane sent out a short email to the whole production team, simple and clear, stating that personal comments about appearance were unacceptable and that any concerns should go through management. No names, no drama, just policy. Greer read it at her station and slammed her mouse down hard enough that Kala flinched across the aisle. I did not look up. I just kept working. That night, I received another email from Jane. There was a scheduled on-site installation coming up, a hot and cramped job at a partner facility, and she was splitting us into teams for the trip. Greer's name was on the same job list. Not on my team, but on the same site. My stomach tightened as I stared at the screen. Heat, cramped spaces, layers we could shed. My short sleeves were one thing, but in a tank top, the full sleeve on my other arm would be impossible to ignore. I could already imagine Greer's face. I could already feel the tension crawling up my spine. The question from the beginning came back to me, sharp and uncomfortable. Why was she watching me so closely in the first place? I shut my laptop slowly and sat in the dim light of my kitchen, feeling that familiar mix of fear and anger settle into my ribs. Because if Greer could not win inside the shop, I had a feeling she was going to try to win in front of other people, and she was going to pick the hottest, most public moment possible to do it. The morning of the on-site installation, I dressed like I was packing for a weather argument. Loose work pants, steel toe boots, a breathable black tank top under a thin button-up that I could peel off if the heat got brutal. I stood in my bedroom with my hands resting on the edge of my dresser, staring at the open closet like it might offer a new option. My arms were not a secret. They were just mine. Still, I could feel that old instinct trying to rise. The one that said, make yourself smaller, make yourself easier, make yourself invisible so nobody gets mad. I buttoned the shirt anyway and left it open. I did not cover. I did not hide. I just breathed through the tightness in my chest and walked out the door. At the shop, 2 company vans idled in the lot, engines humming in the early heat. People carried tool cases and bundled cables like we were going camping. The sky already looked bleached. That bright summer glare that makes everything feel sharp sharper and louder. Greer stood near the passenger side of the second van, arms crossed, cardigan again, buttoned all the way up. She looked at me once quick, like a flick of a match, then turned away as if I had contaminated her morning. Jane moved between the teams with a clipboard, calm voice, quick instructions. She smiled at me when she saw me, but her eyes had that alert look, like she was tracking the whole room at once. She had assigned Greer to her team. She had kept me separate. That alone told me Jane believed me. We arrived at the partner facility mid-morning, a warehouse with a narrow workroom tucked behind it, the kind of place where air does not circulate so much as surrender. The moment we stepped inside, sweat started forming at the base of my neck. The room smelled like dust and old cardboard, and the machines there were louder than ours, a constant grinding hum. The facility manager, a man named Knox, met us at the door with a stressed expression. "Thanks for coming," he said. "We are on a tight timeline." Jane nodded. "We will get it done." We split teams and started unloading equipment. The partner staff moved around us, glancing at our tool cases, asking quick questions. Nobody looked at my arms. Nobody cared. Everyone had bigger problems. Within minutes, the heat became unbearable. People peeled off layers without thinking. Button-ups came off. Hoodies vanished. Someone tied a bandana around their head. The air felt thick enough to chew. I stepped into a corner near the machine we were calibrating, pulled my open shirt off completely, and tucked it into my bag. The relief was immediate, like taking a deep breath after holding it too long. I felt exposed for a second, not because of the tattoo, but because I knew Greer was somewhere in the room. I could sense her like a pressure change, turned and saw her. Greer stood near a stack of pallets, watching me like she had been waiting for that exact moment, her eyes locked on my full sleeve, the paisley curves and geometric shapes wrapping my upper arm, the shading that disappeared under the tank strap. Her face tightened. Then her whole expression shifted into something ugly, like a dam breaking. She marched toward me, fast enough that a couple people glanced over. "Are you serious?" she snapped, voice loud, sharp, aimed straight at my skin. "You come into someone else's workplace looking like that." I felt every muscle in my body tense. My first impulse was to defend myself, to say all the things I had swallowed for weeks, but I did not. I remembered the meeting. I remembered the access logs. I remembered the calm. I kept my voice low. "Greer, stop." She leaned closer, eyes bright with anger. "This is not our shop. This is a professional facility. You are embarrassing all of us. You are making us look trashy." I could feel heat rising in my face, but I held still like a statue. Inside, shame tried to flare, that familiar old shame that is not even mine, the kind women get handed when they do not behave the way someone wants. Then anger followed, steady and cold. I looked past Greer and saw Jane turning, alerted by the volume, walking toward us. Greer noticed too, and she lifted her voice higher, like she wanted an audience. "Jane should have never hired you. This is why standards are collapsing. You cannot just let people look like that." Jane reached us, expression firm. "Greer," she said, "enough." Greer swung toward her. "Do not tell me enough. You are the one enabling this. In front of a client, you hired her and you keep tolerating it." Jane's voice stayed controlled, but it cut like a blade. "I hired her for her skill, not her skin." For a moment, the room went oddly quiet around us, like nearby workers had paused just enough to listen. I saw Knox a few steps away, eyes narrowing, reading the situation. Greer's face twisted. "Skill does not matter if she looks unprofessional. This reflects on all of us. It reflects on you. It reflects on me." Jane stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Greer, you are creating a scene in someone else's facility. You will stop now, or you will leave." Greer's breathing quickened. She looked around like she wanted people to back her up. Nobody did. The partner staff looked confused, then annoyed. My coworkers looked uncomfortable. Even the loud machines seemed quieter, as if waiting. Greer's gaze snapped back to me. "Cover them," she hissed. "Just cover them." I kept my voice calm. No. It was a small word, but it felt like a door closing. Greer's eyes went wide, and then she did the thing I had been expecting since the day she started. She lost control. She pointed at my arm like it was evidence of a crime. "She is doing this on purpose. She is provoking people. She is trying to make me look like the bad guy." Knox stepped forward, voice tight. "Excuse me," he said. "Is there a problem with your team?" Jane turned to him immediately, professional mask snapping into place. "I apologize, Knox. We are handling it." Greer spun toward Knox as if he were her rescue. "There is a problem," she said. "She is violating basic professional standards in your facility." Knox stared at her, then at me, then at Jane. His eyes moved over my tattoos for half a second, then his expression hardened into annoyance. "Lady," he said, "I have forklift drivers in here with skulls on their necks. I do not care about her arm. I care that you are yelling in my workroom." The humiliation on Greer's face was immediate. She opened her mouth, then closed it, like she could not find the right angle. Jane's tone became very crisp. "Greer, go to the van, now." Greer's eyes flashed. "You cannot talk to me like that." Jane did not blink. "Go." Greer stood there trembling for a moment, then turned abruptly and stormed out through the side door, cardigan flapping behind her like a flag of surrender that did not know it was surrendering. The room exhaled. People started moving again. Someone's tool clinked against metal. The hum returned. Knox muttered something under his breath and walked away. Jane looked at me. "You okay?" she asked quietly. My throat felt tight. I nodded once. "Yeah," I said. My hands were steady, but inside my ribs something was shaking loose. Jane's eyes softened. "Keep working. I will handle the rest." For the next hour, I did exactly that. I calibrated. I checked measurements. I logged settings. I spoke only about the task. I stayed calm so Greer could not rewrite me as emotional. But every now and then, when I glanced at the door, my stomach tightened because I did not know what she would do next. Then the third twist came, and it was not one I expected. Joe arrived. He pulled up in the company car with the part-time HR coordinator in the passenger seat. And when they walked into the facility, their faces were serious in that quiet, business-like way that made my skin prickle. Jane met them near the entrance and spoke with them in low voices. I could not hear the words, but I saw Jane gesture toward the side door Greer had exited through. I saw Joe's jaw tighten. A few minutes later, Joe walked out to the van alone. I watched through the open doorway, my hands resting on a tool case, as he spoke to Greer beside the vehicle. I could not hear them, but I could see Greer's posture, stiff and defiant at first, then shifting into something more frantic. She gestured wildly. She pointed back toward the building. She even laughed once, sharp and bitter. Joe did not mirror her energy. He barely moved. He just stood there, arms relaxed at his sides, letting her burn herself out. Finally, Greer yanked open the van door and grabbed her bag. She threw words at Joe like she was trying to hurt him with syllables. Joe said something short and final. Greer froze. Then she did the most Greer thing possible. She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and walked back inside, like she was about to deliver a speech to myself. She marched into the workroom, where everyone could see her, and announced loudly, "I cannot cannot continue working for an organization with no standards. I have my reputation to protect, even if none of you care about yours. Nobody responded. Not a single person. The silence was so complete it felt heavy. Greer looked around, waiting for outrage, waiting for begging, waiting for someone to validate her righteousness. Jane's voice cut through, calm and controlled. Greer, you are done here. Leave your badge on the table. Greer's eyes snapped to Jane. You will regret this, she said. You will all regret this. Joe stepped into the doorway behind her. Greer, he said, time to go. Greer's face twisted. Then she slammed her badge down on the nearest table, hard enough to make a couple tools jump. She spun on her heel and stormed out. Through the open doorway, I watched her get into her car. I watched her slam the door. I watched her sit there for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel like she was trying to squeeze the world into obedience. Then she backed out and drove away. Just like that, she was gone. The strangest part was how fast the air in the room changed after she left, like someone had opened a window inside my chest. The tension I had been carrying for weeks loosened all at once, and my knees felt slightly weak, like my body finally realized it could stop bracing. Jane gathered us in a small group near the machines. Her face was serious, but her voice was steady. This is not how we do things, she said. If someone is targeting you, if someone is making the environment hostile, you tell me. You do not absorb it. You do not try to handle it alone. I swallowed. I felt shame rise, not because I had done something wrong, but because I had waited so long. I had let it sink into me. I had let it make me doubt myself. Jane looked at me directly for a moment, then addressed everyone. We will be formalizing appearance guidelines in writing, she continued. Tattoos, hair color, piercings, anything is fine as long as it is safe around machinery and not offensive. And we are adding a floor supervisor role, someone with authority to step in immediately when behavior becomes an issue. Arden nodded slowly beside me, expression thoughtful. Kala let out a small breath, like she had been holding it too. Joe stepped forward, and for the record, he said, we reviewed access logs this morning. The documentation edits were not accidental. That is part of why we moved quickly today. My heart gave a small, fierce thump. Not triumph, relief. The truth mattered. The proof mattered. The calm mattered. We finished the installation without further drama. Knox even thanked us, and as we loaded the vans, he caught Jane's eye and said quietly, you handled that well. Some people bring their personal issues to work and expect everyone to carry them. Jane nodded once. We do not, she said. Back at the shop, the next day felt lighter. People spoke more. The usual small jokes returned. The machines sounded the same, but the room felt different, like the walls had stopped listening for trouble. Jane held short individual check-ins with each of us. When it was my turn, I sat across from her desk again, but this time my stomach did not twist. Jane looked at me for a long moment. Magnolia, she said, I am sorry you went through that. You should not have had to build a case to be left alone. I nodded, throat tight. I did not want to be dramatic. Jane's eyes sharpened, kind but firm. It is not dramatic to protect yourself. Next time, come to me sooner. I nodded again. I will. As I stood to leave, Jane added, by the way, your work on the last run has been excellent. Joe and I noticed. We are giving you the lead role on the new line training when we hire Greer's replacement. The words hit me like warmth, not because I needed validation, but because for weeks Greer had tried to reduce me to my skin. And here was my manager reminding me what I actually was in this place. Skilled, trusted, valuable. I walked out feeling taller without trying. A week later, a new policy memo went up on the bulletin board. Clean and simple, no drama. It stated that personal comments about appearance were unacceptable, that tattoos were allowed, that safety and respect were non-negotiable. Under it, Jane had written in her own hand, if you have a problem, bring it to me, not to each other. The shop supervisor role went to Arden, and suddenly there was a person on the floor who could shut things down the moment they started. Not because we were fragile, but because we deserved a workplace where we could breathe. The final twist arrived quietly, on an ordinary Thursday afternoon. I was at my station when a notification popped up on my phone during break. A new review had been posted online about our company. A coworker had texted me the link with a single line. She is trying. I did not click it right away. I sat there with my coffee, staring at the screen, feeling that old familiar tension twitch. Part of me did not want to see her words again. Part of me wanted proof that she was gone for good. When I finally opened it, the review was exactly what you would expect from Greer. Angry, dramatic, vague, accusations about professionalism, complaints about leadership being lax, a line about employees being allowed to present themselves in ways that would embarrass any serious organization. I scrolled, heart steady, expecting it to end there, but it did not. Below the review, someone had replied, not with insults, not with threats, just one calm, factual statement from an account that used Joe's first name and title. It said in plain language that the company supported employee expression within safety guidelines, that harassment was not tolerated, and that the reviewer had resigned after repeated violations of conduct expectations. No emotion, no fight, just truth, placed in the right place, where it could not be twisted. I stared at that reply for a long moment, feeling something settle inside me like a stone dropping into its final place. Greer had tried to control the story. She had tried to poison the room. She had tried to make me ashamed of my own body. And in the end, she left by her own choice, carrying her obsession with her, while I stayed, still breathing, still working, still exactly who I was. That evening, as I walked to my car, the sun was low and gold, and the warm air brushed my arms like it was blessing them instead of judging them. I glanced down at the flowers on my forearm, and for the first time in weeks, I did not feel the urge to hide. I felt proud. I unlocked my car, sat down, and closed the door gently. The quiet inside the cabin wrapped around me, and I realized something simple and sharp. Greer never hated my tattoos. She hated that I could live in my own skin without asking her permission, and she could not stand losing that kind of control. Now, a quick 2-minute pause with you, just me talking as the creator. When someone fixates on your appearance at work, it almost never stays on the surface. It is not really about what you are wearing or what is on your body. It is about power. It is about someone feeling unsettled inside themselves and trying to settle that feeling by making you shrink. And the trap is, they want your emotion, they want your loud reaction. They want you to look unstable so they can look reasonable. That is why staying calm matters. Not because you are weak, because you are strategic. I learned that boundaries are not just words. Boundaries are actions. A note with dates, a calm email, a simple question that forces the truth into the open. It is choosing proof over arguments. It is choosing professionalism over panic. And I also learned something else. If you keep trying to handle everything alone, you can accidentally teach people that you will tolerate it. That is not your fault, but it is a reality. The moment you put the truth in the hands of someone who can act, the whole dynamic changes. So if you are dealing with someone like that, breathe, document, keep it clean, keep it calm, let them get overconfident, then put the truth exactly where it belongs.